With Brexit and the pandemic, the country is threatened with a double shock. The MPs in the lower house vote for the controversial internal market law. And meanwhile, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is fighting against an uprising in his own party. The 9th round of Brexit negotiations began on Tuesday, but Boris Johnson apparently has other concerns. The British Prime Minister has been trying for days to contain an uprising in his Conservative Party against the government's corona policy. A good 80 Tory MPs demand from Johnson that Parliament discusses and votes on planned changes to the regulations with immediate effect. The so-called rebels are fed up. They want to get the government on course, away from paternalism, penalties and laws, which they think harm the economy. Not to mention a Prime Minister who on Tuesday was unable to properly explain the rules in force when asked by a journalist. Johnson had tightened the regulations even before the number of new infections every day rose to more than 7,000. There has been a 10 p.m. curfew for pubs since last week. And until further notice, the so-called rule of 6 applies. In England, only 6 people from different households are allowed to meet. According to surveys, the majority of British people support the government's corona rules. But in Downing Street, there are growing concerns that approval ratings could drop rapidly if a government subsidy program ends in late October for those who have been sent on forced leave by their employers because of the pandemic. One thing is certain, Great Britain is facing a harsh winter. The economic outlook is poor and unemployment is likely to rise noticeably. Then there are the consequences of Brexit, even though it looks a bit better at the moment, but we'll all have to wait and see. Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove has already warned that there could be long truck traffic jams in front of the ports on the English Channel, regardless of whether there is a trade agreement with the EU or not. In the worst case scenario, the government anticipates a queue of up to 7,000 trucks waiting to be processed at the border. How bad it gets depends on whether London can reach a deal with Brussels by the end of the year. If it does not succeed, there will be customs duties and customs controls. The British economy is already warning the government of possible supply shortages for food and medicines. In addition to Gove, it is above all Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak who is pleading for a deal with the EU in the Prime Minister's cabinet. He has the well-being of the economy in mind and warns of a double shock from Corona and Brexit. On the other hand, there are strong forces in Johnson's environment who advocate a rigorous no-deal course in order to be able to act completely independently of Brussels when it comes to government subsidies and data protection guidelines. If Johnson's closest advisor, Dominic Cummings, has his way, the UK is set to become a technology mecca, attracting talent and money from around the world. Yeah, he's quite a dreamer, isn't he? But until then, it is still a long, long, long way. First, Johnson has to weigh up whether a deal with Brussels will help him politically or not. The freedoms promised by Cummings and the possibility of always blaming the EU as the culprit in problems speak against a treaty. In favor of an agreement with Brussels, however, would be that Johnson could show his critics that he is a deal maker. Labour leader Keir Starmer, whose party is now ahead of the Tories in the polls already, does not miss an opportunity to portray Johnson as incompetent. This is what Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is doing too, whose independence efforts should gain momentum in the event of a no deal. In the negotiations with Brussels, Johnson will continue to threaten to break the withdrawal agreement. On Tuesday evening, the MPs in the lower house approved the internal market law presented for this purpose in the third reading with 340 votes in favor, 256 spoke out against it. With the law, London wants to put the EU under further pressure, but the Prime Minister has opened a time window for an agreement with Brussels. The law is not due to enter the House of Lords before December. If there is a deal by then, Johnson could adjust the law in agreement with the EU. The deadline for an agreement is the end of October. And if you now want to know more about European politics, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen, right next to your chance to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß Alice Damter.